Welcome, friends, to this week's exciting episode of Hired. I have a very special guest who I'll be bringing out shortly. And I don't know if you have coffee, wine, beer, whatever you have on your Thursday afternoon, but you're going to enjoy this conversation. Before I bring him out, a lot of you know him because I posted ahead of time who the guest is. I'd like to do something where it's like a reveal, where maybe you don't know and they just show up, kind of like Smartless podcast, and we can guess. But here's what I can tell you. And if you didn't know who this individual was, dynamic background. So let's talk about him and his professional background, how he would be described by people he's worked with. Here are some things that our research department kind of came up with to describe Ray. So Ray is somebody professionally who has razor sharp focus, highly energetic, dynamic, passionate, and always delivers. These are things that people that have worked with him in the past have said about working with Ray. Now, to the fun stuff. Here's some things you may not have known about Ray, but also as an individual. So not only is he trilingual, and I had to Google this, that's 3 languages, trilingual, we'll find out which ones they are. He's lived in 5 countries across the world. He considers himself a cupcake critic and foodie, but most of all, my favorite, his feature actor debut in 2016 was on a well-known show in Canada called The Story of Us. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to my friend, Ray. Ray.
Thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm excited to be here chatting with you, Mike.
I sent a recording of that to you. So ahead of your Zoom calls, if you just want to press play and I can do that and then you kind of zoom in, feel free to do it. So I got so excited introducing you. I didn't even say what the topic is of what we're talking about today. So we are going to be diving into the employee experience and how it ties into talent acquisition strategy, which I think is super important for where we're at today in terms of the labor market. But before we get a little bit more serious, I want to ask you, there are 3 stats I pulled, and I want to know which one you think is the most shocking. First of all, and it all has to do with time, okay? On average, okay, it takes between 10 to 15 minutes for people to consume a cup of coffee. It takes, on average, 10 to 20 minutes for people to drink a beer. And it takes 35 to 45 minutes for someone to drink a glass of wine. Which one shocks you the most?
The beer, probably. But I'm a beer drinker, and so I tend to drink it like water because it's so refreshing. And so it doesn't usually take me that long to drink my beer.
I thought 10 minutes was, especially that first one too. Like, I think it's less than 5.
Was that coffee?
Coffee was 10 to 15.
Yeah,
beer was 10 to 20.
Too. Yeah, people like their beverages, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked. I was like, maybe this is American, maybe Canadian. We're a little bit slower when we drink it, but like, yeah, that's kind of what it is. So thanks for coming on this week and kind of when we jump in. I know I gave you a fantastic introduction. So before we kick things off, I kind of want to turn things over to you. And rather than giving us the resume version of yourself in the background, first of all, I would love to know what 3 languages you speak and what was your favorite country that you lived in of the 5. And if you want to give us the 5, that'd be great too.
Yeah, so I speak English, French, and Arabic. I'm Lebanese, so that's where I got the Arabic from. And I went to French school growing up. I got the French, and I just caught English from watching a lot of TV and having a lot of English-speaking friends. I've lived pretty much all over the place, a little bit in France, in Dubai, a little bit of England, obviously in Canada, as well as Spain. So a lot of moving around everywhere. And that actually probably kind of ties in maybe a little bit into what we're talking today. I kind of grew up all over the map, living in various countries, and that kind of really shaped me in terms of the exposure that I had. So much world, so much culture, so many people that had different kind of exposures really made me appreciate the art of storytelling. And so I actually started acting at a very young age in theater, in TV, in film, and kind of did that all the way into my 30s. And so when it was time to go to school, I went and did a Bachelor of Fine Arts in film. At the same time, I really kind of started falling in love with the art of character development and how personality traits vary from person to person, producing different reactions and behaviors in people. So then I did my second degree in behavioral psychology. So naturally, insurance was the right way to go after that. I mean, I don't know how that happened, but I graduated and I had 2 job offers that same week. One was to travel to Barcelona and become a cruise ship performer, and the other was to work for a travel insurance call center in Toronto. Um, I was all about the nomadic bohemian lifestyle. And so I thought, yeah, going to Barcelona and traveling the world while, doing cabaret songs on a cruise ship sounds really good. For a 23-year-old, it was kind of like winning the lottery. But I had student loans. And a lot of student debt that I needed to pay off, and so I thought I'll do the call center. It paid well. I'll pay off my student debt, and then I'll do the cruise ship. 16 years later, here I am. So that plan did not exactly go accordingly. But throughout my 16 years, mainly in the HR, learning and development, employee engagement space, the great thing about working for that little call center was that I was able to really get my feet wet with a lot of different things. So I did the recruiting, I did the interview process, I did the onboarding, I did the training, and then I did the coaching. And then in 2016, I moved from the call center to Zurich, Canada's Canadian headquarters in Toronto. And then in 2020, 2 weeks into the pandemic, I officially moved into the leading employee experience and culture role for Zurich Canada, which really is a fancy title for saying that I lead employee engagement, diversity and inclusion, and community investments and partnerships. And man, do I love it. This is probably as close as I can get to my dream job. I stepped into the role at a time when I think the world was being flipped upside down. No one knew anything. Buying, toilet paper was like the Hunger Games in the stores. And I think the need for employers to connect and support their people was more than ever before, or at least in our lifetime. So I got to jump in head first, get to know our people, connect with our people, engage with them, and really do whatever was within my means to support, engage, and connect with them. Because, as you know, culture is really optimal in any organization. And as we, I think, sadly saw over the last 2 years, without your most important asset, which is the people, the talent, there really is no business. So looking forward, I think, as you mentioned, looking forward in a kind of an unstable time, so much is happening coming out of the pandemic. I think we've arrived at a moment where we can backslide into the status quo, or we can transform how society will work together, and for generations to come. Which for a nerd like me, that is really cool. That jazzes me every day to wake up and either log in or come into the office and kind of do what I do. Not everyone gets the career opportunity to have an active role in influencing, I think, such a mammoth element of society, shaping how talent will work, how we will interact, how we will connect, and we have that opportunity. So I think focusing on how employers are engaging with their people and creating opportunities for their people to connect with each other, whether it's virtually or in person, during moments that matter throughout that, let's call it the career life cycle, will really be critical. And what do those engagements look like, essentially? I'm a huge believer in a digital first way of working, complemented by in-person interactions, because let's face it, the world is going in that direction. And in many companies, the likelihood of getting everyone under one roof at the same time on a regular basis is just not likely. And so companies need to really find technology now that assists with bringing people together, even when they are miles apart. And companies need to also understand at the same time their employee experience and recognize those moments that matter when engagement beyond the laptop, meaning in-person interaction, is crucial to meeting the needs and expectations of your customers, as well as giving your people the opportunity to share moments with colleagues, feel the growth, feel the relationship building and the bonding, and ultimately the emotional connection to the brand.
You said so much there that I want to unpack. That was just like fantastic. You pretty much filled the my. If people can see my notes here for the
Oh,
framework,
no.
the framework for the episode is just answered in the first 10 minutes. But it was great. I mean, and I think one of the things I want to jump into is this concept of the employee experience and why it's so topical right now and why it's important. And I think you touched on a little bit. The question I have for you is, do you think because of what happened in the world a couple of years ago and the responsibility of employers to take care of their employees, is that what caused this shift in the employee experience and how it's changed now to be more than just free coffee and free beer and much deeper than that on a connection level? Do you think that's kind of what spurred this change? And
yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I think it's a couple of different things. I think the expectation of what workplaces have to offer to its employees have drastically evolved over the last decades, but especially over the last 3 years. Long gone are the days when a company, and you know this, would want to fill a job. They would post something on. Candidates would then one by one try to convince the company that they're the right person for the job by selling their accomplishments and their education and their skills. Today, when a company is looking to fill a job, they really better be ready to also convince the candidate why they should work for them, right? There's a real increase in job seekers looking to work for companies that can demonstrate forward thinking, creativity, and I think real action in spaces such as employee engagement, in having a diverse and inclusive culture, and community impact, right? You put all these things on your website, you talk that you support it, but what are you actually doing in those spaces? And really being curious about that culture. We all, I think, want to be part of a collaborative, productive, and inclusive workplace that is not only committed to our customers, but also to our people and our communities and the planet, really. I think that is just as important to job seekers, to career changers, or to even emerging talent, as much as your bottom line and your profits.
so you find it's great because you're kind of tying this into the employee experience as part of the value proposition you need when you go to the market, because the market's demanding this now for people to come back, and probably also from a retention standpoint in terms of retaining top talent because of that employee experience as well. So if you're somebody, that's listening to this or watching this that needs to understand a sense of what their employee experience is and where do they start, do you have these conversations where it's like, here's how you can get a handle on what your employee experience is and how you can look to optimize that or improve upon that?
Yeah, I think the term employee experience is really, it's big and it's also vague, right? I remember when I first came into the role, I thought like, well, if I wanted to walk from my desk to the washroom and that's like a really long walk, is that a bad employee experience, right? There's so much that goes into that if you don't really know what employee experience is and what you define it as. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is what are you defining, you and your organization, what are you defining it as? For me, the simplest way I think of the role is influencing the quality of emotional connections that our employees have with our company. These connections are shaped by their interactions with people, with policies, with processes, with technologies during those moments in their journey that matter. One quote, not to get too deep here, but one quote that I would often go back to, especially at the very beginning when I took on the role, and I still, kind of think about it even today, is Maya Angelou's "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." So feelings, or the ability to make people feel an emotion, makes for the most impactful, inspiring experiences. These experiences then shape our beliefs, which in turn will drive our actions, and then that will start to create the culture. So it's my first day on the job. I come into the office and I talk to 2 or 3 people, totally blank slate here. Somebody tells me, oh, the snacks we have in the kitchen are amazing. There's so much good snacks. And I talk to somebody and they talk about the CEO being really approachable. And they walk, the CEO walks around and will have conversations with people because they really want to get to know their people. And somebody tells me that my manager is one of the best managers in the company. Automatically, I may not have had any direct interaction with the CEO or with my manager or with the snacks in the kitchen. But suddenly, that conversation has ignited excitement, happiness, confidence that I've made the right choice in joining the company. Now, when I go home at the end of the day and my partner, a friend says, hey, how was your first day? I'm going to say, right, and now my beliefs have already been formed already based on those interactions. And I'm going to say, it sounds like we've got amazing food. And the CEO sounds like he's really approachable, which I really respect. I really respect a CEO that walks around and wants to get to know their people. And I hear my manager is fantastic. So I'd say a pretty good first day on the job. And I think right there, I'm already influencing the culture, right? And so culture is really a bunch of dynamic, consistently evolving pixels of experience, all shaping people's beliefs and driving their actions. Multiply that by 500, 1,000, 50,000, depending on how big your organization is. And that's your culture right there. And so I always, for me, go back to what are those feelings that we want to bring to life through the experiences we're looking to create in employee experience.
And to build on that, I love that. I love that, the emotions and the feelings. And do you find that those are team specific, organization specific? Because you and I were talking, and everybody watching, like, Ray is hiring. So, like, do you look at your group and think, like, here's how I want people to feel when they work in my team? And it's probably some consistencies to overall, but is it team specific, or do you look at kind of designing it overall, or how do you kind of break that down?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have guidance when you think about what are your values, what are the values of the company, what are the behaviors of the company, and that kind of gives you your blueprint of what that culture is supposed to look like, and that's a good starting point. But at the end of the day, culture is such a hot topic in HR all the time. I mean, I've been in HR for 16 years and it's never been not a hot topic. It's always a hot topic. And the reason is because it is so sensitive. I gave you a positive example of how I can influence culture, but it works the same way in the negative way. One person has a bad experience and starts spreading that around. Now it's spilling into the culture. So you constantly need to all your management team, all your leadership team, to be very aware of the perception of people's actions and how is that spilling into the culture. So yes, I would say team to team, office to office, even organization to organization. It's gonna vary, and it's varying all the time, which is why it's so important. And leadership is so on this all the time. They always want their people to know what is the culture that we're looking for, what is the culture that we are striving for, and everyone needs to be pushing in that same direction to make it happen. Otherwise, it's always going to be a mixed bag of cultures everywhere in every team.
Now, do you find, and we're talking about how this ties into talent acquisition strategy, you kind of see it starting to come, because I mean, if we're really focused on how we can affect people's emotional connection with where they work and how they feel, that should be the basis of how we're positioning, or I don't want to say selling because it sounds bad, but that's how you're positioning the role. Is here's how you would feel if you worked here. Here's kind of what our goal is and what our impact is going to have, really kind of touching on those moments or those positive emotions that you're looking at creating. Would you say that's how you can take the employee experience and plug it into the talent acquisition strategy? You being a storyteller, I'm sure you've got a great way of tying these things together.
Yeah, listen, I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, right? For employee experience, for me, talent acquisition is our great storytellers, right? Like that's what they are. They are the Steven Spielbergs, the Charles Dickens, the J.K. Rowling, right? Like they are the people that are going to take all of these experiences that we are doing in employee experience, and we're breathing life into our values, right? Care, togetherness, forward thinking, belonging. A talent acquisition team that is not collaborating with employee experience to take these experiences that really embody the values and behaviors of the organization are missing out on key opportunities to tell real stories from real people, right? And give the culture that we're talking about, culture, but give the culture real voices and real faces that job seekers can then connect with. We both talk all the time about the importance of storytelling. We just did it right now. When looking for talent, employee experience is where you find the content for those stories. So absolutely, that is where the intersection of talent acquisition and employee experience happens.
Well, and I think it becomes a source of great content, relevant content for stories, rather than talking in generic terms about diversity or culture or whatever your values are. You have tangible stories of events, moments, memories with people that like people will resonate with those because they can see themselves in those moments instead of talking about a company that values diversity. Like, what does that even mean? But like, if you can actually have moments in a story that captures that, you get it and you understand how that works. So is that kind of what you say, is like you find and I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a moment in your employee experience that you would use as the basis of a story to attract top talent?
There are so many. There are so many stories. I mean, I've been with the company Zurich for 16 years now. One story that I talk about all the time is my growth in the company, right? So people are always wanting, we want growth, but we're not sure if there is growth. And I always use my example. I came in with zero knowledge of insurance. I thought insurance was a paper that I put in my car and allowed me to drive. That was the extent of knowledge in terms of insurance. I wanted to become a rock star. I had no interest in sitting behind a desk. And so I came in with really nothing. And yet they saw potential in me. They saw creativity in me, and then they allowed me to thrive in a space that I didn't even knew existed, right? Like, I didn't really understand what HR really did. That was not really something I was really thinking about at that age. But there I was, and they kind of saw my interest in it, and they just watered that plant. They just kept giving me more opportunities, and here I am today, right? And so I think that, I always talk about my growth in the company. That is a story. That's a success story. That is a story that we want to talk about when we are looking for talent, especially when they say, is there growth in the company? Well, let me share a story with you, right? Let me share my story with you, making it really human, right? That is probably the most important thing that I can say is, don't be afraid to be human in your talent acquisition approach. People cannot connect with stock images of models looking like they're having a great time, right? Like, I remember when I got accepted to university, I got a big package, and back then you get like all these papers in this big brown package. And the first brochure thing I pulled out was a bunch of kids sitting on this like grassy hill having, like, it looked like the cast of Dawson's Creek, and they all looked like they were having a fantastic time. And automatically I thought, that's what my university experience is going to look like. And then I started university, and it was nothing, not even close to that. And I remember kind of feeling disappointed, like I was gypped, right? Like, that was not what I was expecting. And so that was because I connected with something that was quite misleading. And so I couldn't really then connect with the reality of what I was being presented. And so let's give people a real human story from the horse's mouth of what it's really like. Let's find those nuggets of success stories and let those people do the storytelling for you, right? It doesn't always have to be talent acquisition. People love to be part of that. Your people love to be part of the attracting talent process. So use them, leverage those stories that you already have in your company.
I mean, if you want to work with Spark, I mean, this is like you're like, this is fantastic. I mean, you're kind of And not only did I know we were going to get along, but the fact that you dropped the Dawson's Creek reference in that thing, I mean, that was,
I got you.
I'm Team Dawson all day for sure, definitely. So, and I know, Ray, I know we've taken a lot of your time. This is great. I mean, I feel like we can do a whole other episode. We might on diversity, just because the lens that you see the world, given your background and kind of how you're choosing to use that lens and the capacity you're at, I think is fantastic. And we need more individuals like you that are thinking about this, because it's the way that we're going to change and humanize a process that has been automated to crap. So before I let you go, where can people find you and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, listen, I'm on LinkedIn. Hit connect, hit follow, send me a message if you'd like to chat about all things employee experience or the meaning of life. I'll talk about anything. I'm always happy to to meet new people and learn more about your stories and your experiences. So hit me up.
Ray, thank you so much for joining me on this week, and everybody that kind of came and joined us today. I really appreciate it, and we will see you next week.
Thank you for having me, Mike.